Wait, you cut what I remember asking that, already knowing I wasn't going to like the answer. And yeah, he didn't even look up. Just casually says the stewardship program is gone, like he's deleting an old app. No big deal, right? Except it kind of was a big deal, actually. No, it was the deal. And in that moment, I had this weird feeling like something just snapped and nobody else in the room heard it yet. So, yeah, Kyle finally looks up like I'm the one being dramatic here, and he just goes, "The cost benefit doesn't support it, no hard ROI." I blinked, just once, slow. Because what he had just cut wasn't some random expense. That program was a $200,000 line item in my budget, annual, and every dollar of it had a job. Those weren't generic reports. They were customized stewardship reports, built specifically for our top-tier sponsors. And not just any sponsors, I'm talking about Arcline Biomed. $60 million a year. That's not passive income. That doesn't just sit there quietly renewing itself. That kind of money shows up because someone is actively making sure it feels justified, protected, understood. That someone was me. Those reports weren't fluff. They weren't decoration. They were the reason Arcline stayed. I mean, I still remember their SVP leaning across the table one lunch and saying, "You're the only vendor who knows how we think before we think it." You don't get that kind of trust from dashboards and generic updates. But Kyle saw a PDF with charts and decided it was, what? Optional? I'd seen this type before, you know the type. Fresh MBA energy, fluent in PowerPoint, allergic to anything that doesn't fit neatly into a slide with 3 bullet points and a growth arrow. He'd been here, 3 weeks, and already labeled my entire department non-revenue generating, which is funny, considering I was the one who landed the deal he now strutted around claiming. "We're entering a strategic realignment," he says next, like he's reading from a script he barely understands. "Trimming fat so we can scale lean." Trim fat. Yeah, I've heard that before. That's corporate code for we don't understand what you do, so we're cutting it and hoping nothing breaks. "So just to be clear," I said, keeping my voice calm because snapping would have just fed his ego, "you eliminated the personalized stewardship deliverables for our top sponsors, including Arcline." Now he finally looks at me, smiles even, like I'm overreacting. "I'm sure they'll survive without a pretty PDF." A pretty PDF, right. Here's the thing he didn't know. The thing he didn't bother to ask, didn't bother to read. That pretty PDF wasn't optional. It was contractually required. 3 years ago, during Arcline's renewal, I negotiated a clause, not flashy, not something anyone would highlight in a meeting. It lived deep in the appendix like appendix of an appendix level, written in that deliberately boring legal language no one ever wants to read. But it mattered. It stated that Arcline required annual strategic stewardship documentation, customized, delivered in a format aligned with their internal board reviews. And if we didn't provide it, they didn't have to renew. Not only that, they didn't even have to tell us they weren't planning to. Just silence, then gone. 90-day review window, no obligation, no warning. It was clean, surgical. And now, Kyle had just killed the one thing keeping that clause satisfied. I could almost see it playing out already. Months down the line, leadership scratching their heads, wondering why Arcline suddenly went quiet, why emails stopped getting replies, why the renewal never came, and no one would connect it back to this moment. Except me, because I knew exactly what he'd just done. He didn't cut a cost, he cut the wire. "Noted," I said. That's it. No argument, no explanation, no attempt to educate him, because honestly, if he hadn't asked by now, he wasn't going to listen. And besides, sometimes the only way people understand consequences is by meeting them. I turned back to my desk, opened the contract archive, and pulled up the Arcline file. Scrolled. There it was, clause and all. I didn't react, didn't sigh, didn't shake my head. I just stared at it for a second, like you do when you're looking at something that hasn't exploded yet, but you know it will. And quietly, without a word to anyone else, I started preparing for impact. I didn't storm into a meeting, didn't fire off some dramatic email, no speeches, no "this is a mistake" monologue. That kind of reaction, it doesn't land the way you think it does. It just makes you look emotional and easy to dismiss. So I went quiet. Back at my desk, I pulled up the contract archive. Arcline's file loaded in a few seconds. Same as always. I scrolled straight to the clause. No hesitation, no second guessing, just confirmation. There it was, exactly as I remembered it. I took a screenshot. Nothing fancy, just clean, time-stamped, visible. Then I opened a private folder on my drive, not shared, not synced to anything external, just mine. I labeled it insurance, dated it, dropped the file in. Then I paused for a second, not because I didn't know what to do next, more like acknowledging the shift. Because up until that moment, my job had always been to fix things before they became problems, quietly, efficiently, invisibly. This time, I wasn't fixing it. I was documenting it. I opened a new document, blank page, title at the top, Arcline Stewardship Clause, Internal Advisory, and I started typing, March 6th, VP of Revenue. Kyle Jensen has formally eliminated the stewardship reporting budget. This action effectively nullifies compliance with Arcline's contractual renewal clause. I kept it neutral, no emotion, no blame-heavy language, just facts, clean, direct, unarguable. I added one more line. This memo serves as internal documentation of forewarning should renewal be declined or revenue impacted. That was it. No dramatic conclusion, no urgent action required, just a breadcrumb. Something that would sit quietly in the system until someone needed to trace where things went wrong. I sent it to legal. No CC parade, no escalation chain, just legal. And then I BCC'd myself. Not because I didn't trust them, but because I've been around long enough to know that things get buried, emails get lost, context disappears, copies matter. After that, I stopped. Not working, not doing my job, I didn't check out. I just stopped doing the extra parts, the invisible parts. I didn't remind Kyle's analyst to include historical context in sponsor metrics. Didn't forward notes from previous quarterly reviews. Didn't flag inconsistencies in reporting language. Didn't offer to walk anyone through Arcline's internal preferences or the way their leadership interpreted data. All the little things that kept everything running smoothly, I let them go, because those things weren't in the new plan. And I wasn't going to keep patching holes in a system that had just decided it didn't need me. I stayed in my lane, exactly where Kyle had drawn it. If something broke outside of that, not mine anymore. Still, I kept watching, quietly. I checked Arcline's investor page once a week. No alerts, no notifications, just a manual check, scroll, scan, close. I started keeping track of internal gaps, nothing dramatic, just small notes. Missing context here, delayed follow-up there, shifts in tone from previous communications. I didn't flag them. I logged them every now and then. I'd open that insurance folder and add another file. Screenshot, email thread, calendar entry, nothing out of context, nothing exaggerated. Just reality captured as it happened. Because the thing about situations like this, they don't fall apart all at once. They unravel slowly, quietly, one missed detail at a time. And if you're not paying attention, it just looks like normal business. But I was paying attention, not to intervene, just to understand. There's a difference. I wasn't bitter, not really. I mean, yeah, it stung. Watching something you built get dismissed like it was cosmetic, that part doesn't feel great. But this wasn't about emotion anymore. It was about clarity. Kyle had made a decision, a very confident one, and now all I had to do was let that decision exist. Fully, completely, without interference. Because if I stepped in even once, if I patched even one gap, it would blur the line, it would give him cover, it would make it look like the system still worked the way it used to. And it didn't. Not anymore. So I stayed quiet. Did my job, logged what mattered, kept everything clean, and waited. Because somewhere down the line, someone was going to ask what happened. And when they did, I wasn't going to rely on memory. I was going to have a record. The email came in at 7:03 a.m. No greeting, no explanation, just a subject line about organizational realignment and a link to a PowerPoint deck. You know the kind, pixelated boxes, awkward arrows, titles that sound important but don't actually say anything. I clicked it, and there it was. My name, pushed off to the side, a small box in the corner, strategic advisor, consultative only. No team, no direct reports, no dotted lines, not even a loose connection to the Arcline portfolio I'd built from scratch. Just floating. I stared at it longer than I should have. Like maybe if I looked hard enough, something would shift back into place. It didn't. Then I saw the calendar invite. Sponsor reporting alignment, owner Jake W. Jake. I had to double check it. Clicked his name, opened his profile. 24, fresh out of undergrad, 2 years of data entry at a pet insurance startup. His pinned post was a selfie in front of our building on his first day. Caption said something like, "Time to make it rain." I just sat there for a second. Not angry, not even surprised, really, just processing. Because this wasn't about Jake, he didn't choose this. He was handed something he didn't understand by someone who didn't understand it either. Still, the message was clear. I was out, or at least moved somewhere I couldn't interfere. I didn't send an email, didn't ask for clarification, didn't push back. I got up, walked to the kitchen, and made coffee. It tasted like nothing. When I came back, I opened the sponsor compliance calendar, and I started updating it. Every item, one by one. ArcLine Q1 materials delivered. ArcLine Q2 stewardship prep canceled, budget cut, clause 7.3 at risk. I added notes, quiet ones, not for anyone else, for me. Then I exported everything. PDFs, screenshots, archive copies, saved them locally, backed them up, even put a copy on an encrypted drive I kept tucked away. Not because I was paranoid, just because I knew how these things go. That was the day I stopped being the fixer. Before all this, my job wasn't just managing partnerships, it was protecting them. If a timeline slipped, I fixed it. If a vendor ghosted, I chased it down. If someone forgot a deliverable, I rebuilt it before anyone noticed. I once drove 2 hours to hand deliver a corrected board packet because a shipment got messed up. No one asked me to do that. That's just how I worked. But now I was consultative, which translated means wait until someone realizes something's wrong, and then maybe they'll ask you. So I waited and I watched. Jake started sending out sponsor decks. They looked fine at a glance. Clean layouts, some charts, a few buzzwords sprinkled in, but the details were off. Metrics pulled without context. Engagement numbers that didn't account for segmentation. Dates slightly misaligned. Nothing catastrophic, just wrong enough. I saw formulas break in his spreadsheets. Watched him pull raw data from the CRM and drop it into reports without adjusting for how ArcLine actually interpreted those numbers. I didn't say anything, not once, because that wasn't my role anymore. And more importantly, stepping in would have reset the expectation. It would have told everyone that even if they removed me, the system would still quietly correct itself. It wouldn't. Not this time. So I let it run. I let Jake learn in real time, without interference. I let Kyle present numbers that looked good on paper but had no structural integrity underneath. I let the small mistakes stack, because that's how failure actually builds. Not in one big moment, but in a series of tiny oversights that no one stops to question. And to be clear, I wasn't sabotaging anything. I wasn't feeding bad data or setting traps. I was just absent, and absence, in a system that depends on invisible work, is louder than people think. Over time, I could feel the shift. The precision was gone, the nuance disappeared, conversations got shallower, reports got cleaner, but less meaningful. From the outside, everything still looked fine, maybe even better, but I knew what was missing, and I knew what it would cost. I didn't feel good about it, not exactly, but I also didn't feel responsible anymore. That part had been reassigned, so I stayed where they put me. Quiet, observing, documenting when needed, and letting the system prove its own limits. At first, it didn't look like anything. That's the thing people don't realize. When something big is about to break, it doesn't announce itself. There's no alarm, no flashing red light, just small shifts. Easy to miss if you're not looking for them. But I was the first sign, silence. ArcLine stopped replying. Not completely at first, just slower, a delay here, a vague response there. Then eventually, nothing. Emails sat unanswered. Follow-ups went nowhere. Jake sent a check-in deck, no response. Kyle pushed out one of his thought leadership memos, nothing. Even a direct message with a Starbucks gift card link just kind of floated out there and died. 27 days. That's how long it had been since we got a real reply. No one flagged it. Or if they noticed, they didn't think it mattered. I sat in on one of the internal calls muted, camera off, like usual. Kyle was walking through his numbers, talking about engagement being up, pipeline looking strong, everything trending in the right direction. And I'm just sitting there thinking, based on what? Because ArcLine wasn't engaging. Not anymore. But their absence wasn't loud. It didn't show up as a red flag on a dashboard. It just blended into the noise. Jake pinged me once. Hey, quick question, was ArcLine always this quiet? I stared at the message for a second. Then I closed it. Didn't respond. Not because I didn't know the answer, I did. But that wasn't my lane anymore. Instead, I opened a new tab and pulled up ArcLine's investor relations page. That's where they talk, if you know how to read it. There was an update, nothing major, no headline, just a small addition buried in the footnotes. Partnership accountability benchmarks updated to reflect revised stewardship expectations for FY25. That was it. One sentence. Most people would scroll right past it, but to me that wasn't a footnote. That was a signal. They were rewriting the rules. Not publicly, not directly, just adjusting the framework so when they stepped away, it wouldn't look like a breach. It would look like alignment. Clean, quiet, intentional. I took a screenshot, timestamped it, saved it, added it to the folder. Then I started tracking more closely. Every missed reply logged, every unanswered thread saved, every time Jake reached out and got nothing back captured. I even started noting the tone of Kyle's updates. He still talked about Arcline like they were fully engaged, dropped their name into slides, referenced old testimonials like they were current. At one point, he pasted a quote from over a year ago next to a stock photo handshake and called it ongoing partnership strength. I clipped it, dated it, filed it, because the gap between what was being said and what was actually happening was getting wider, and no one seemed to notice. Or maybe they just didn't want to. I created another folder, executive discrepancies. That's where I started cross-referencing things, public statements from Arcline, internal claims from Kyle, timeline mismatches, language shifts. It wasn't emotional. It was surgical, precise. Because this wasn't about proving someone wrong, it was about understanding exactly where things were drifting and how far. Meanwhile, internally, everything still looked fine. Meetings happened. Decks got presented, numbers got shared. Kyle walked into every room like things were under control, confident, relaxed, talking about momentum and growth like the ground beneath him wasn't already shifting. And maybe that's the weirdest part. He wasn't lying. Not intentionally. He just didn't see it, because he never looked past the surface. But our client, they weren't loud clients. They didn't complain, didn't escalate, didn't send warning emails. When they were unhappy and they went quiet. And quiet in this kind of relationship isn't neutral. It's the last stage before exit. I checked their site again a few days later. Another small change. A missing logo from a partner highlights page, a hyperlink that used to point to one of our joint initiatives. Gone. Nothing dramatic, just absence. The kind you only notice if you remember what used to be there. I saved that too, because by then it was clear. This wasn't random. This was a pattern, a slow withdrawal. And the whole time, leadership kept talking about growth, about alignment, about strong pipelines and healthy engagement. I didn't interrupt, didn't correct anyone. I just kept watching, because when a client like Arcline goes quiet, it's not silence, it's pressure building, and eventually it breaks. The only question was when, and who would still be pretending not to see it when it did. It happened on a Tuesday morning. Nothing dramatic about it, no alert, no internal email, no sudden escalation, just part of my usual routine. Coffee, inbox, then Arcline's site. I clicked into their strategic partnerships page, not expecting anything new. Honestly, by that point, I was just checking out of habit, like retracing steps you already know by heart. And then I saw it. For a second, I thought the page hadn't loaded correctly. Something felt off. I scrolled back up, looked again. Our name was gone. Just gone. No announcement, no transition note, no thank you for the partnership, nothing. The section where we used to sit front and center, full description about long-term integration and trust had been replaced. Different logo, different name, Nexvia. I leaned back slightly, just staring at it. Not shocked, not even surprised, really. Just confirmed. Because this was the moment where all those small signals finally aligned into something undeniable. They didn't just go quiet, they left. And they replaced us. Cleanly. No noise, no overlap, no ambiguity. I didn't rush to tell anyone, didn't open Slack, didn't check if someone else had noticed. I already knew they hadn't. Instead, I opened my archive, created a new folder, defection initiated, dragged in a screenshot of the page, full view, timestamp visible, saved it, closed the tab. That was it. No reaction, no panic. Because by then, this wasn't unfolding in real time for me. It had already happened. This was just the visible version of something that had been set in motion weeks ago. A quiet exit, surgical. And technically, completely within their rights. That's the part people miss. They didn't break the contract. We did. Later that afternoon, Jake messaged me. It was hesitant. You could feel it in the typing. Hey, quick question. Was I ever supposed to send Arcline something like a report or briefing? I don't think I ever got anything on that. I stared at it for a second. Not at the words, at what they meant. Because right there, in that one message, was the entire breakdown. No handoff, no instruction, no awareness of the clause, just a gap. I didn't reply. Closed the chat, because anything I said at that point would have come out wrong, not helpful, not neutral. And honestly, it wasn't my responsibility anymore. Instead, I opened my master file, added a new entry. May 9th, junior analyst confirms no instructions provided for Arcline stewardship brief. Clause 7.3 breached without mitigation, legal not informed. I highlighted it. Then I moved on. Next step confirmation. I searched my inbox. Filtered for Kyle's emails mentioning Arcline over the past 3 months. 2 attachments. That was it. I opened both. Neither one matched the required format outlined in the contract. No structured stewardship summary, no board-aligned reporting, nothing close to Appendix C. Just surface-level updates. I saved copies. Then I checked Slack. Scrolled through project channels, looking for anything referencing Arcline deliverables. Found one message from Kyle. "Let's not overthink Arcline. They're loyal and locked." I took a screenshot. Saved it. Because that sentence, that assumption, was exactly how this happened. Loyalty isn't automatic. It's maintained. And we had stopped maintaining it. I leaned back in my chair for a second, just letting everything settle. This wasn't a mistake in the usual sense. No missed email, no scheduling error. This was structural. A decision made at the top, combined with a complete lack of follow-through underneath. And no one connected the two. I checked the CRM out of curiosity. Arcline's deal status still read auto-renew in progress. I almost laughed. The system thought everything was fine, because the system only tracks what it's told to track. It doesn't see silence. It doesn't understand absence. It definitely doesn't read contract clauses. I closed it, then just sat there for a minute, not thinking about what to do next. That part was already done, just acknowledging it, because this was the point of no return. They were gone. Not at risk, not slipping, not needs attention. Gone. And the worst part, no one internally had realized it yet. Not really. They were still operating like the relationship existed, still building decks, still referencing Arcline like they were part of the pipeline. But the reality had already shifted. And I had the full timeline sitting in a folder. Every missed step, every ignored signal, every assumption that replaced actual work. All of it. Clean, ordered, undeniable. So I closed my laptop, leaned back, and waited. Because it was only a matter of time before someone else finally saw what I'd been watching this whole time. The all-hands invite hit everyone's calendar like a dropped glass. No agenda, no notes, just mandatory. That's never a good sign. By 3 p.m., the Zoom room was full. Faces popping in, half smiles, people pretending this was just another update. You could feel it, though, that quiet tension, like everyone already knew something was off. Kyle showed up front and center. And immediately, something was different. His voice slightly higher, tighter. "Team," he started, clearing his throat. "We've encountered a market shift." A market shift. Right. He stumbled through a few buzzwords, trying to frame it, but it didn't take long before the actual sentence came out. Arcline Biomed had officially defected. $60 million. Gone. Just like that. No transition period, no negotiation, legal notice filed, partnership obligations transferred immediately. The chat exploded. Wait, seriously, how? Messages stacking faster than anyone could read them. Finance started scrambling, trying to model the impact. Legal was already spinning up scenarios, even though, honestly, there wasn't much to argue. The clause was clear. We'd missed it. Kyle kept talking. Something about external pressures, market conditions, pricing misalignment across evolving vendor ecosystems. It sounded polished and completely empty. No one was buying it. The CFO cut in flat direct. "Kyle, we had a renewal clause. Was it met?" There was a pause. Not long, but long enough. Kyle blinked, shifted slightly in his chair. "Well, that reporting function was deprioritized in Q1 as part of our resource optimization strategy. Was it met?" This time from the CEO. No edge, no volume. "Just wait." Kyle hesitated again, tried to pivot, started talking about macro trends, global headwinds, the usual deflection package. Didn't land. You could see it in the faces on screen, the shift. People weren't confused anymore. They were connecting dots, and they didn't like what they were seeing. Kyle kept pushing, though, talking faster now, throwing out phrases like pipeline strength and future recovery positioning. But it was unraveling, because none of that explained the one thing everyone was now focused on. How does a $60 million client just disappear? Without warning, without escalation, without anyone seeing it coming. The CEO leaned forward slightly. "Anything else we need to flag with Arcline?" he asked. Kyle smiled. Actually smiled. "They're solid," he said, "just slow on scheduling, probably travel related." I just sat there, muted, camera off, listening, because that was the moment it became clear he still didn't see it. Even now, even after the notice, he was still talking like this was a delay, not an exit. And that's when the pressure really started to build. You could feel it shifting from confusion to something sharper, something heavier. Because this wasn't just bad news anymore. This was failure, and everyone in that call knew someone was about to be held responsible. The boardroom felt different, quieter than usual, not relaxed quiet, more like the kind where everyone's holding something back. Kyle stood at the front, clicking through his deck like it could save him. Slide after slide, charts, frameworks, a SWOT analysis at one point. None of it mentioned Arcline in any meaningful way. Finally, someone cut through it. Was the exit a surprise to you, Kyle? That was Mara, board chair, calm voice, no emotion in it at all. Kyle adjusted his glasses, buying himself a second. Well, it's not exactly an exit, he said, more of a reallocation within their vendor ecosystem. Was it a surprise? Same tone, just sharper. Kyle paused. Yes. And that was it. You could feel the room shift, subtle but real. Because now it wasn't about interpretation anymore, it was about accountability. He tried to recover, started talking about industry churn, post-pandemic spending patterns, words filling space. No one interrupted him. They just stopped listening. Then the CEO turned, slowly, like it cost him something. You used to lead the Arcline account, he said, looking directly at me. Do you have any insight into what happened? I didn't rush, didn't clear my throat or lean forward dramatically. Just reached into my bag, pulled out my laptop, and opened a single document. Already queued. Yes, I said. I turned the screen slightly so they could see it. It wasn't my writing. It was Arcline's. A statement pulled directly from their investor page. I read it out loud. Due to unmet obligations tied to annual stewardship documentation, we have elected to move forward with a more aligned integration partner. I stopped there. No commentary. No explanation. Just the sentence. You could hear someone inhale quietly across the table. Stewardship documentation, Mara repeated. That sounds contractual. It was, I said. Another board member leaned forward. Was that obligation missed? I looked at Kyle. Yes. No hesitation. Kyle shifted in his seat. It was deprioritized, he said quickly. The program didn't show clear ROI. Did you know it was required for renewal? The CEO asked. Kyle opened his mouth, then closed it. That was enough. The CEO reached for his laptop, scrolling through the document I'd pulled up. Clause 7.3, plain text, no ambiguity. Partner shall provide annual stewardship brief no later than end of Q2 each fiscal year. Failure to comply voids automatic renewal. He read it once, then again, slower. The room didn't move. No one spoke. He closed the laptop gently and pushed it across the table toward Kyle. Not aggressively, not dramatically, just returned it, like it didn't belong to him anymore. When did you become aware this clause was missed, he asked, still looking down. 3 months ago, I said. And did you raise it? I did. March 6th, internal advisory memo sent to legal, documented in the system before my reassignment. He nodded once. No follow-up. Kyle tried again, reaching for something, anything. There was no intent to breach, he said. Resources were shifted. We prioritized pipeline acceleration. Mara raised a hand. That was all it took. Intent isn't the issue, she said. Execution is. Silence again. Heavy now. You could hear the CFO tapping on his tablet, probably already calculating the fallout. Legal whispering just low enough to catch fragments, breach exposure, process failure. Kyle looked smaller, like the room had closed in around him. I didn't say anything else. Didn't need to, because at this point, the facts were doing all the work. Every piece was there. The clause, the missed obligation, the decision to cut it, the absence of any mitigation. It wasn't a mystery anymore. It was a sequence, and everyone in that room could see exactly where it broke. The CEO leaned back slightly, eyes still on the table. No anger, no raised voice, just finality. Kyle sat there, staring at the same document he'd never bothered to read before. And now, it was the only thing that mattered. Funny thing is, it wasn't some massive scandal or dramatic betrayal that took everything down. It was one decision, one detail ignored, one clause nobody bothered to read. That's all it took. And yeah, by the time people realized, it was already over. So if there's anything to take from this, pay attention to the small stuff. That's where everything starts. Anyway, if you made it this far, you probably get it. Stick around. There's always more where this came from.